Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about SNAP 2024 examination, and I would analyze the questions and the question paper that was administered today across India. This analysis has been compiled on the basis of feedback that we have received from numerous students of ours. So without any further ado, let's get started. To begin with, SNAP examination, as you would know, is conducted by Symbiosis International deemed to be university, and it gets you admission into all the business schools which are affiliated to Symbiosis International University. So this examination was conducted today across India, and we have not received any feedback about any kind of technical difficulty that might have occurred at the examination centers, and that means the examination was conducted in a very smooth manner as such. Now, the pattern of the examination remained absolutely same. This was informed to the students well in advance by SNAP authorities, and the pattern was quite similar to the kind of pattern we have seen in SNAP exam in the recent years. So there were a total of 60 questions in the exam that needed to be done within 1 hour. The only challenge that students might have felt because of this pattern is, especially if students would have written CAT and MyCat and other exams, they would have got accustomed to a longer duration, whereas SNAP being a 1 hour exam, it would have needed much more faster approach when it comes to solving questions. But students who would have written the mocks that time has provided, they would have found this exam very comfortable to deal with. So good practice with the mock SNAP papers that time provided would have definitely helped the students. One more thing to notice about this pattern is 25 questions appeared from logical reasoning, 20 questions appeared from quantitative, data interpretation and data sufficiency, and remaining 15 questions were from general English. Every question carried 1 mark weightage, and every incorrect answer was awarded minus 0.25. That means 1/4 negative marking was there in SNAP exam. Because of negative marking, it would have made sense for students to focus on accuracy also. Blind guesswork would have definitely created problems for students, and it was not advisable for students to indulge in guesswork in this examination. Now let's talk about each of the sections one after the other. Let's begin with general English. This was the first section in SNAP examination. A total of 15 questions appeared from here. What was interesting was almost half of the questions appeared which were based on grammar. So grammatical concepts were tested with 7 questions in SNAP exam. Students who would have utilized the study material that time provided for preparation for basics of grammar would have found these 7 questions manageable. In terms of difficulty level, these 7 questions were of moderate difficulty level. Of course, couple of them were easy also, couple of them you can say were moderately difficult, but all in all, collectively we can say that these 7 grammar based questions were of moderate difficulty level. And there was a variety of questions. It's not that all 7 of them were of the same types. There was a lot of variety among these 7 questions also. But students who had good grasp of concepts, grammatical concepts, would have found this fairly manageable as such. Fill in the blank questions, there were 4 of them, and these 4 were a definite questions to be attempted. Any students who left these 4, he would have definitely regretted the decision after coming out of the examination center, because these 4 compared to the other questions were much more easier to deal with. Vocabulary based couple of questions was there. There was one question where you had to do match the following based on antonyms. So a good sound vocabulary was the key to these 2 questions, and they can be classified as fairly moderate in terms of difficulty level. There was one question based on parajumble. So only one question came, and it was fairly moderate in terms of difficulty level. People who had done good preparation for CAT would have found this question very comfortable to deal with. But people who don't have good grasp on parajumble's approach may have found it a little difficult to deal with. Finally, as always, there is one question of idioms and proverbs. In past, you had more than one question, but this year only one question was given based on proverb, and it was fairly moderate in terms of difficulty level. Now, as far as English section goes, the following are the observations. The questions, the students reported that they were fairly direct kind of questions which could be solved very easily, but the only challenge here was that the duration of the examination was 60 minutes. That means the student had to go pretty fast when it comes to solving these questions. Very few questions, in fact, in this section needed students to ponder over it and think about it. Otherwise, the questions could be done fairly comfortably. All in all, we can say out of those 15 questions, any student who made an attempt of anywhere between 9 to 11 would have found, can be considered as good number of attempts in this section. 9 to 11 would be good number of attempts. If you did more than that, then good for you. Otherwise, 9 to 11 is generally classified as good number of attempts in this particular section. Now, moving on to the second section of SNAP, which is analytical and logical reasoning. The kind of questions that have appeared in SNAP was very much on expected lines. We had total of 10 questions based on critical reasoning. Out of those 10 questions, 4 of them were based on assumptions. Now, statements and assumptions, they require good conceptual clarity. So, students who attended classes of statements and assumption would have found it fairly comfortable to deal with. But students who lack that clarity might have struggled with these questions. Hence, I am classifying the difficulty level as moderate. Courses of action, there were a couple of questions which were moderate difficulty level kind of questions. But one challenge with regard to questions of critical reasoning was there was a lot of data to be read. Considering that there was only 1 hour of duration, even though the difficulty level is moderate, but the fact that the students had less time, that's the reason I meant earlier when I said that 9 to 11 attempts can be considered as a good number of attempts. It's only because of paucity of time. Cause and effect, 3 questions appeared from cause and effect, and these questions, in fact, out of those 3 questions, couple of them were extremely simple. You can classify them as easy, but there's one question that can be classified as moderately difficult. All in all, we can say easy to moderate could be the classification of these kind of questions. Speculation based question was there, one question was there, which was fairly moderate in terms of difficulty level. Good thing about this question was the question initially explained what speculation basically means, and then the question followed. That would have made life a little more comfortable for the students. There were a couple of questions based on clocks. These were absolutely simple questions, did not involve a lot of calculation and stuff. A simple formula based question was there. There was one other question which could have been very easily solved if student knew about that value. So anybody who attended session on clocks would have found those 2 questions fairly comfortable to deal with, and surely these 2 questions should have been attempted. Calendars, couple of questions was there. One question was easy, the other one was moderate, so I am classifying them as easy to moderate. Blood relations, questions were there, 2 questions were there. They were fairly easy questions. All that you needed to have was you needed to know how to draw the family tree, and then it would have been fairly comfortable for you to solve the question. There were 3 questions based on letter series. Now, these 3 questions I classified as easy to moderate. The reason for that is 2 of them were absolute sitters, very, very easy questions. But there was one question that was difficult question. That's the reason I mentioned it as easy to moderate. So that one question might have troubled students. When it came to that question, a smart student would have been one who would have tried that question for maybe 20-25 seconds, and if you did not get the answer, it would have been advisable for you to skip that question. Linear arrangement as well as circular arrangement, one question each appeared in the examination. While linear arrangement question was very straightforward, circular arrangement question was also easy, provided the student had information about how to deal with questions when people are facing away from the center. Then it was fairly easy question to deal with. There were a couple of questions based on logical deduction, what we call as syllogism based questions, and one of those questions was fairly easy, the other one was moderate. So easy to moderate could be the difficulty level of these 2 questions. Coding and decoding was the other question that perhaps students might have found difficult to deal with, because it was not the conventional kind of coding decoding question that people are much more accustomed to. It was slight deviation from that, so that could be classified as a difficult one. There was one miscellaneous question. So all in all, these 25 questions appeared in SNAP examination. All in all, we can say the section could be classified as a moderate difficulty level section. Now let's go a little deeper into it. See, the difficulty level of this section, you can see, was similar to how it was previous year. Very much on similar lines was this section. There was not much change per se. Most of the questions, as I mentioned earlier also, they were very straightforward, very much doable, except for those 2-3 questions which could have been avoided. The remaining questions were fairly easy to deal with. But the challenge for the students would have been again paucity of time. Keep in mind only 1 hour duration was there, and keeping that in mind, we can say that 18 to 20 attempts out of 25 can be considered to be good number of attempts in this section. Finally, let's talk about the third section, quantitative ability, data interpretation and data sufficiency. Now, even though the name is data interpretation and data sufficiency, there were no questions of data interpretation and data sufficiency. All the questions here were based on quant only. Now, what was interesting to notice here is, as you can see on the screen, quite a few questions appeared based on algebra, based on pure maths. What is algebra? So based on algebra, a lot of questions were there, and few questions were there based on arithmetic maths. 4 questions came from geometry mensuration also. These were moderate to difficult level. Couple of them were moderate difficult level. Couple of them were slightly more difficult kind of questions. So that's the reason I have classified them as moderate to difficult. Permutation and combination, couple of questions were there which were fairly moderate difficulty level. Probability question was easy to moderate. People who had conceptual clarity about probability would have found it fairly manageable. Profit and loss question was there, but it was a difficult one. The student had to do a lot of work in order to get the answer out here. Stocks question was there, which can be classified as easy to moderate. Time and work was one question that definitely students should have attempted, because this was very easy question to deal with. Other than this, we had ratios. Couple of questions were based on ratios. One of them was easy, one of them was moderate difficulty level. Cubic equations was a surprise question here. This question can be classified as moderate to difficult, and in case people were not from mathematics background, they would have found it a little more difficult to deal with. Percentages question can be easy to moderate. Progressions was an easy question, a must attempt question. Numbers question, couple of them were there. One of them was moderate difficult level, one of them was difficult. Logarithm question was there. Again, it is moderate, but people from pure maths, people who are not very strong at maths, they might have struggled with this one also. All in all, as you can see, a good number of questions appeared based on algebra, based on pure maths. This would have made this section slightly more difficult than compared to the last year. This section compared to the last year was surely a notch higher in terms of difficulty level, especially given the fact that people who are not from mathematics background, generally they generally depend on arithmetic maths for their marks. They might have struggled a bit when it comes to this section compared to the other two. For those kind of students, it would have been advisable that they attempt a lot more questions in logical reasoning and English, and then attempt whichever ones they could in this section also. Very few arithmetic questions appeared, and quite a few algebraic based questions were there. There were absolutely no questions based on data interpretation and data sufficiency, as I mentioned earlier. Now, considering that the difficulty level has been a notch higher than the previous year, we can say out of 20, 10 to 12 attempts can be considered to be good number of attempts in this section. Now that we have gone through all the 3 sections, let's talk about the expected cutoffs. Now, compared to last year, logical reasoning section and the English section was fairly similar to last year, but because the difficulty level of quant slightly went up, the cutoff marks, the cutoff scores are expected to be slightly lower than the previous year. So these are our predictions or our estimation for this year. SIBM Pune, we expect it to have a overall cutoff score of anywhere between 37 to 39 marks. SCM HRD, we expect the cutoff to be between 36 and 38. So in the last few years, SCM HRD and SIBM Pune, the cutoff has become almost equal. So that's the reason you can see the prediction also is saying similar kind of thing. Now, after these two, generally you will notice a fall in the cutoff. The reason is the cutoff percentile falls after SCM HRD. That's the reason SIIB as well as SIBM Bangalore, we expect the cutoff to be between 30 to 32 marks overall. Keep in mind, there are no sectional cutoffs in Symbiosis Business Schools. So even if you perform poorly in one of the sections, but you did amazingly well in the other two, as long as your overall score is good, you are bound to get an interview call from these colleges. Now remember, whatever cutoffs I have mentioned out here, these are all for their flagship programs. The other programs that these business schools may have, the cutoffs will be far lower than this. Also, the cutoffs that I have mentioned, they are for general category. People who belong to SC, ST, differently abled or Kashmiri migrants, their cutoffs will be far lower than this. Alright, so with this, I have come to the end of this video. I hope you liked it. If you did like it, do hit the like button and do share it with other students who might have appeared for SNAP exam today. Thank you everyone for watching this video.